Well, hello and welcome to the nonStatic podcast, where we explore how to keep moving forward when motivation feels distant. Here we dive into finding peace and fulfillment in a busy world, discovering how to embrace life's opportunities to live with purpose and joy. My name is John, and this is my brother, Dr. Josh.
Hello.
Josh is the founder of nonStatic, and we are here to move
Shoot the
forward.
breeze.
Shoot the breeze.
Shoot the breeze.
Do whatever.
Yeah.
Just kind of talk about things, and hopefully people want to listen to us talking about our lives for a minute or two, and then get into some real good meat and potatoes, right?
Talking about things and stuff.
Things and stuff that actually matter.
That's the goal, at least.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
How's your spring been so far?
It's been good. We haven't been at this for a while, have we?
It's been a
couple weeks.
It's been a good 3 weeks. I apologize to everyone who has been anxiously waiting.
Yeah.
I will take responsibility for that. I had a vacation in Mexico.
How dare you?
I know, a couple of weeks ago, and then unfortunately there was a family emergency right after we returned, and I've been dealing with that for the past week or so.
Life happens.
Life does happen. It's a good reminder that life is fickle. Is that the right word for it? Or life is fleeting.
There we go.
We never
Life is
know.
fleeting, yeah.
We're never guaranteed another breath.
True.
We really aren't.
Yep.
And so often I take that for granted, and we just assume we're going to wake up tomorrow. We assume that life is going to continue going our way or not going our way.
Right.
However you choose to look at life. Yeah.
It's a strange predicament that we face in the human existence, and that is it's ever changing, and you never know what a given day will hold in store for you.
Life is fragile. Handle with care. All those phrases.
Yeah.
While they seem cheesy on a normal day, when something traumatic or deeply saddening happens to your family, it does take on a new meaning. It
sure does.
They're good things to learn, or good things to keep in mind and keep in front of you, because like I said several times already, we're not guaranteed another moment.
Nope.
So,
and it's helpful to put things in perspective
right
around those times too.
Life is short though too. Anyways, man.
Yeah, I'm learning that every day. We're all getting older.
I'm gonna be 40 years old this year.
Ooh, it'll be over the hill.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Is Amanda planning a big party for you?
I have no idea. I told her I'm not really interested. Yeah, so we'll see if she does that or not.
Okay. All right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go on a trip or something like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good away for the 40th.
Yeah.
I have a friend, or an acquaintance, I should say, that serves with me on the school board, and they just went away for her 40th birthday, and they took a cruise. So they had from what I'm seeing on Facebook, they had a great time.
Nice.
So
that's awesome. Well, hey, how long were they gone for?
40 days. I don't know. Probably
40 days.
Probably a week or so. Yeah, 40 days.
Man.
That would actually,
wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, you take a trip for every day, one day per year.
Yeah, 1 day per year.
Dang.
Oh man,
that'd be
that'd be expensive.
We may be onto something.
I think so. I think we should do it. So we need to make our millions, and then we can do that, right?
Yeah. Yep. Anyway,
so you know what, the topic that you have today, I actually was, before I actually read the content, I was actually thinking of it in a different light. But this is a really good topic, the perpetual beta life.
Yeah. So beta with a B.
Yeah.
So you were referring to it as gym bros.
Yeah.
When you were
an alpha chat,
when you
alpha
read it.
dog.
Yeah. The bros in the gym.
That's right.
But I was more referencing more like in the technology world. There's beta versions of software or a beta product, which essentially means that the beta just means it's not quite finished yet, right? They send it out. Apple does it. I think Google does it as well. Yeah, they send it out. Developers can look at it and tinker with it. It's in a state of always needing to be improved. They're always reiterating it, always making tweaks. And then they go ahead and release version 1.0 finally, which is what do they call it, the gold standard.
It's they're just their first official,
the first official version.
Official, ready for commercial use.
Sent out to the masses.
Right.
Yeah. But so I was reflecting about that, and I'm like, well, what happens if we live our entire lives in that planning mode,
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what I kind of wanted to examine a little bit is, I guess that's what I was thinking about is there value in staying unfinished, or does growth demand that we eventually commit and stand behind our choices? I think what I have noticed in the work that I do is a lot of times we can spend a lot of time planning and anticipating something and tweaking our plans and then replanning the plan and then rewriting the goal, but never ultimately get around to making a decision about something or proceeding ahead with something. So there's some products that have stayed in beta for a very long time.
Right.
Google's notorious for this. Google's notorious for a lot of annoying things.
It's a love-hate relationship with me and Google.
Yeah, but I didn't know this, but Gmail apparently the most popular email service in the world.
Don't tell me it's still in beta.
No, but Gmail is known to have a ridiculously long beta version, and I didn't know how long it was, but my understanding is it was years long.
It was years
before they actually launched it. It's a ridiculously long beta version for email.
I remember I got in early.
I got in on the ground level too. Actually, I think I'm the one that.
Are you the one who sent me the invite?
Yep. I think I remember sitting in the old library at Minnesota State University Mankato, and I got my Gmail address and I sent it out.
Because you could only send it you could only get it by invite. Like you had to apply for the beta,
something like that,
and then like you could invite people,
yes,
like a select number of people.
Yep.
That's just like Facebook.
Yeah.
You could not get into Facebook unless you had, but that was, I don't think that was in beta mode anyways, but let's stick to
There's also a product, have you ever heard of Google Wave?
Was that one of their social media attempts?
I was hoping you could tell me. I don't know. I just looked did a Google search for products that remained in beta mode forever, and Google Wave is one of them. So they kind of ratted themselves out with that one.
Yeah.
But apparently it was a product they had that they spent a lot of time on, that was in beta perpetually, and they actually never formally released it.
I would be interested to know how many programs they actually things in general never actually make it even to beta. Well, I do know of one that a couple of them really. Oh, I'm just thinking of a couple.
You're sore about, aren't you?
I'm still sore about them. Inbox and Allo. Any of you Google people who know who really enjoyed Google Inbox, Josh, it was an absolutely revolutionary way to handle it, and you could actually get to Inbox Net Zero very quickly with it, like legitimately, and it was great. And they decided like, oh, we don't want to deal with this anymore, so we're just going to cancel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still hurt about that one. I'm still offended by it. And then the other one is Allo. Allo
is their messaging app, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a messaging app. It was just like Google Messages or whatever. I'm sorry, the Apple Messages.
Like iMessage?
iMessage,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm not an Apple.
They just put an I before everything.
And they and it was encrypted. You could it was invite. I mean, like if you wanted to initiate a conversation with somebody, you had to invite them specifically to your chat room, and it worked great. You could send high quality videos and photos. I would argue that it was probably better than iMessage. I could be wrong.
They didn't think so.
Yeah, they surely didn't think so. And then just axed it for no reason because they wanted to focus on RCS. Yeah. Well, RCS took like another 7 years for them to actually get it out and implement it.
Well, they were just planning.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. Don't sunset it.
Right.
Sure.
You really went down a rat. You're really passionate about those messaging apps. Anyway,
that's a rabbit hole.
Let's reel us all back in here. Really, what I'm trying to touch on is so we'll pick on Google because Google's easy to pick on. Everybody hates Google. But when something stays in beta mode forever, it means they're always planning on launching it, but they never actually launch it, right?
Right.
I think we do that a lot of times in our own personal lives too. One example from my life is when I was writing my dissertation. They say to plan at least a year to a year and a half, usually, to write your dissertation. So a lot of people get it done earlier than that, but it takes a year to a year and a half. Well, I was perpetually in, quote, beta mode with my dissertation. And that was, I was constantly in mode of planning, making sure the outline was good, making sure I had my resources, all all those things perpetually. And this happened out quarter after quarter. And finally, my dissertation chair, the person that's in charge of the project, that I had to report to, and that reviews all my drafts, says, at some point you just gotta
start.
You gotta ride or get off the horse. Essentially, you just gotta go do this
that's
thing.
Funny. Yeah.
And he was actually kind of stern about it and said, you either need to do this or you need to essentially withdraw from the program. And it's an example, and I was able to move past that. But really, what I was facing was a resistance to doing the hard work.
Right.
If when I'm constantly in a mode of, I'm just going to plan to make sure it goes perfectly, and I'm going to revise my plan to make sure I have a perfect plan. And I actually never started it because I was scared, or I was nervous about it, or it was a big project. It was daunting, and so sometimes we justify. At least in this case, I justified not starting because I didn't want to start, but I justified my not starting by saying, I just need to plan it a little better. So I need to keep it in beta mode a little longer.
Get all my ducks in a row.
Yeah. So the point is, we tend to glorify like planning, and we've talked about it on here before. Is there's the whole self-help industry, which is great. They talk a lot about planning all the time, but rarely do they talk about implementation, as an example. And that's because the planning part of things is really popular. There's multiple different types of planners out there.
There's too many. I wish there was just one.
The reason they're popular is because people like to plan. They like to think about doing things. They like to set their plan up and get their roadmap going and document it and journal it and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you actually have to start the stuff if you want to move forward. Planning is not going to move you forward. Right. Actually doing it is going to move forward.
Right.
So the point is, if everything stays in your planning mode or your testing mode, when do we actually get around to living the thing in life? And that's kind of the challenge that we all have. If we live in that planning mode, it does provide you some flexibility. You can kind of experiment. You can try new paths and ways of doing things. Planning also helps, avoiding premature decisions. But again, it's kind of a procrastination tactic too, is delaying making the choice to kind of follow through with something, if that makes sense.
Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you never procrastinated?
Yeah, it's it's amazing how good we are at procrastinating.
Like if we never procrastinated, how much better would our lives be in general?
Yeah. Yeah, well, true.
Like where would we be? I mean, sure we'd make more mistakes, but we would learn a lot more. We would have a lot more life experiences. We'd be a lot more bold in our decisions, I would think too, because if you're used to, we don't want to fail.
No, we don't want to fail.
We don't want to fail. I think we have that procrastination, constipation, whatever you want to call it.
Well, and remember that our brain is designed, its primary function is to keep you safe and to keep us safe. And so one of the best things it can do to keep us safe is to not change anything.
Right.
Because if you don't change anything, everything stays familiar.
Right.
And on some level, our brain perceives change as threatening to some extent. And that's why there's a kind of a built-in procrastination. And the fact that it's hard. We as human beings, we like comfort and we like things to be consistent and we like things to be enjoyable and not difficult. And so all those things, the deck's kind of stacked against us, so to speak.
Yeah. And kind of a little bit of a side thing, but not really. I mean, but you and I as business owners, it's easy for us to be very comfortable with the status quo.
Yeah.
It feels good. It feels like things are running smoothly, and like, we don't need to change anything.
Yeah.
But as you and I both know very well, that if we don't change and evolve and grow, if you're not in terms of business, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Exactly.
Well,
that goes within your personal life too. Right. If you're not growing, you're dying. You look at
you just become stagnant. You just start to exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And maybe this is another topic for another time, but I've always wondered, like, I'm very risk averse, but when I do take a risk and it turns out great, it is the most euphoric, energizing feeling ever. Or like even if I took a big risk and I failed at it, I always feel really good afterwards. Like, how do people get to that point where like I'm okay with getting out of beta or whatever?
You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's really at the heart of the matter. That's where it is you have to overcome that psychological resistance. You have to get to the point where you're willing to push past that barrier of, I don't like this in the moment, knowing that something's better on the other side. Yeah. And we pick on fitness, we talk about fitness a lot on here because it's a good parallel.
Right.
But what's the difference between, you look at people that go to the gym and professional bodybuilders, for example, other than the steroids thing, but we're not going to get into that.
Right.
But people that achieve very high levels of physical fitness, one of the things they'll tell you is they'll acknowledge, it sucks, it's painful, it hurts, I don't like it when I'm doing it, but I do it anyway. Why? Because I want to be in control of my pain. Well, what do you mean by that? So it's either going to hurt now or it's going to hurt later. It's like the 40-year-old that, you're going to be 40 soon. It's the 40-year-old that works out. Well, why are you working out now in your 40s? Because I don't want to have pain when I'm in my 50s, is what a lot of people will say. And so it's kind of flipping the script a little bit and saying, it's either going to hurt now or it's going to hurt later. And I'd rather it hurting now. Right. And that's kind of what we have to overcome.
And in that case, it's actually kind of a good hurt.
Right.
It's a feel good hurt. It doesn't feel good at the time, but it doesn't feel good, but it feels good.
Yeah. And the other challenge is, in our, I'll just say our American society, and we're blessed. We are blessed, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the world. We are successful well beyond. We're blessed so much in this country as far as the things we have and the comforts we have. Yeah, it's crazy to think of.
Yes.
But with those blessings, we've become very used to comfort, and we're addicted to comfort. And the addiction to comfort prevents us from being able to kind of achieve goals because we don't like to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Whereas before we had all this success, or before society had all this success, they were used to things being difficult, and so people just did them.
Right.
And we've kind of, as humans in our culture, we've kind of lost that a lot because we're just so used to being comfortable all the time. Right. And that's the goal, is to be comfortable all the time.
Right.
Whereas before, the goal was to grow all the time, to some extent.
That's very interesting.
So we talked about the beta versions of a software. If you live your life like in a beta mode, so to speak, or a beta version, it's like living in a lab coat. You're always experimenting, but rarely presenting the final self. You're rarely taking a step forward and moving it out of that lab experiment or that development phase into actual practice.
But don't you want to be experimenting with your life? Don't you want to be trying new things?
You want to be experimenting, but what I'm talking about is kind of when you talk about the planning thing, like we can...
Getting ready to get ready to get ready.
Exactly.
Okay.
Getting ready to get ready, exactly. So at some point, if we're not careful, living in that planning or that beta iteration phase trap, it becomes avoidance, right? And that's kind of what we were talking about a little bit. There's several different areas that when I reflect on this, that it occurs to me that we face. Why do we stay in the planning stage all the time, and why do we not push through and make the decision or do something that we promise ourselves we're going to do? Why didn't I start my dissertation sooner? Why was I in the planning stage for so long? The first one is the fear of commitment. That's a popular one we use in our relationships all the time. Well, you're not getting married because you're scared of commitment. That could be true. But the fear of commitment is also protecting ourselves from being judged by others. If you commit to something and you're all into something, you open yourself up, you become vulnerable to others.
Oh, it's never going to work.
Right. Or you become others.
People, but not for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Why are you doing that? What do you think you're doing? Why are you doing that?
You think you're going to be a good? You think you're going to be a good singer? You think you can be a good actor? I mean, those are two obvious ones.
Well,
or even like, you really think you can do your own? You can start your own business, or you're never going to get organized with your life, or that kind of thing.
Well, think of this podcast, for example, right?
Yeah.
you and I tossed it around for a while. And we'd had this conversation. I'm always like, well, we need to have a plan in place. We need to have structure to it. And you're like, Josh, at some point we just got to do it. And so you said we just got to do it.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Have to figure it out as we go. Yeah. And so, but for me, it was, I didn't want to be judged by others, and you know me. I'm always thinking about how what we do impacts other people.
Right.
And that's a good thing to some extent. Right. But at some point we want to protect ourselves from being criticized by others. And at some point, if you want to achieve your goals or if you want to progress your life forward, and if you're facing with a significant decision, at some point you just got to commit to a decision and not really care about what others think of you.
I think if we're able to release ourselves from actually caring about what other people think about us, I was like, okay, there's going to be haters.
Yep.
There's at some point when we get 1,000, 10,000, 15,000 followers on this, we're going to have people criticizing every single podcast. The way you said this was wrong, or you never talk about this, or you're missing this one important piece. Well, that's fine. Honestly, I would almost take that as a compliment. Like they think that we are so knowledgeable and so intelligent with this stuff.
So amazing.
That how could we have missed this one thing?
Yeah.
And they're offended that we missed this one thing. So actually, people could take criticism as a compliment, I guess.
Talk about spinning it around the other way. There you go.
Trying to. At least it's easy for me to say now because we haven't had any negative comments on our podcast yet. But
all five of you guys really like it.
Yeah.
John hates it. John hates it when
we have a little more than 5. We have a little more than 5. Yes.
The other one. So we're kind of talking about if we stay in beta, so to speak, that it becomes more of avoidance function. The other way it becomes avoidance is through endless tweaking. And again, to kind of repeat what we were saying before, when we're constantly planning something out, that pursuit of perfection can really paralyze forward momentum. At some point, you just have to do the thing. At some point, you have to make the decision.
I've got a few examples of those.
So go for it.
So one easy example is I needed a shed. I needed a shed.
You needed
my shed was not meeting the needs of my things of my storage and all this, and storage and my man cave and my little workshop. My wife told me that I can no longer have my tools in the garage. I need to clean out the garage, and so I was working with this.
We all know who's in charge now.
I know, exactly. And I was making these drafts, these designs for the shed over and over and over. Well, do I really want that door right there, or do I want to move it over like 6 inches to the left or to the right, or what about those windows? And at some point, I'm like, you know what? At some point, I was just redoing it and trying to make sure it's exactly perfect. And then at some point, I was like, you know what? I just click the button and get it done because like if we bought a house with the shed already on there, I would have loved any shed.
Well, that's a good point.
I would have loved the shed. I wouldn't have cared.
That's a good point.
But then when I'm designing it to be like my dream shed or whatever, which isn't really. I mean, it's a shed. I just had a hard time pulling the trigger. Another one is...
So I have to tell you, you know why? You know how you said if you bought a house with the shed on it, you would love the shed, regardless of what it was. You know why you would love the shed?
Probably because I didn't have to design it myself.
No, because of the confirmation bias.
Tell me about that one.
The confirmation bias is this phenomenon in which human beings, we look for information to support our perspective. So... you buying the house with the shed, it could be a dilapidated shed, but you're going to look for reasons to justify your purchase in the first place.
Because I did buy that shed.
Because you did buy the shed.
Oh, so, interesting.
It's called a confirmation. Anyway,
interesting.
Move on.
Another one is we are switching from we're trying to switch from our note-taking software from like Evernote to Notion. Mm-hmm. And if anyone who knows anything about Notion it is a sandbox.
Yep.
It is a blank sandbox.
Yep.
It is almost no sand in there. You can even choose the type of sand you want to put in there. It's a little overwhelming. It's overwhelming. You can build any template. There's thousands and millions of templates that you can purchase or download from other people. And I was reading an article about it. Like a lot of people who use Notion, they are in constant beta mode, like forever, because they're always tweaking it. They're always trying to make it just a little bit better, and they take it on as their new project. And so I've noticed for myself that I'm kind of perpetually in the beta mode with switching to Notion, because I'm like, I need to find the right note-taking software.
Yeah.
Just freaking click the new page button and start typing.
Yeah. Right. Just get it in there.
Just get it in there. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's got a great search engine. Just figure it out. It's not that big of a deal. And there's so many other things too.
Yeah.
Another one is like finding a vacation.
Oh yeah. Oh geez.
You never want to pick. You don't want to make the wrong decision. You want to make sure you have the right.
You said vacation, right?
Vacation.
Okay.
Oh yeah. You want to just It's
don't go to TripAdvisor when you're planning your vacation, because you'll find that one negative review. It could be a 100-star resort with perfect reviews, and you'll find that one negative review, and it'll taint your.
Oh my gosh!
It'll make
Yes.
you think, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This place is a dump.
Every single resort I've been to has had a lot of negative reviews, but I'm like, you know what? That resort's probably not going to be there if it really is that bad.
Yeah. Yep.
And everyone has been fantastic. Yeah. So someone who just had too much, didn't get the right tequila, or had too much tequila, and they got sick from it, and they left a negative review or something. Anyways,
or they didn't get the right towel.
Right.
So anyway, endless tweaking. The pursuit of perfection can paralyze your forward momentum. At some point, you just gotta go with an imperfect plan, essentially. The next one, which is really, I think, a lot of us will get stuck here, is this idea of false productivity. So remember when I talked about planners, and I was picking on the planners and people that spend a lot of time devising the perfect plan. The reason that happens is because tinkering with your plan and planning it out feels like progress, and it feels productive because you're doing something. You're doing something, but it amounts to busy work because you're not really accomplishing anything. Writing down the goal and writing it down perfectly and writing out all the steps is all well and good. But if that's where you stay and you keep revising the goal and keep so that it's written out perfectly, so to speak, as an example, you're not really doing anything. You're just engaging in busy work, because if you never make the first choice or make the first decision or take the first action on that perfectly written goal, you're wasting your time. Right. And so the problem is tinkering and planning feels like progress when it really, to a certain extent, it is not. It's just writing down what you plan to do. But if you never do what you plan to do, what's the point?
And you're not going to do it.
Right.
Because you're just planning to do what you want to do, but you never do.
So the trap of being in beta mode all the time is, we've talked about that obviously now. But then the thing is, well, when do you actually ship your final product, or when do you make the choice, or how do you know when's a good time to do it? You'll notice whenever, to go back to the technology parallel, whenever a company launches software, whether it's Apple or Google or whatever company you have, it never is perfect, right? There's always imperfections. And what I would say is that you can improve what you haven't launched yet.
Yeah.
If you never launch it in the first place, you can never make progress on it. You can never improve it. And so that's really where the power is of making that decision that you're putting off, doing the thing that you want to do, but you haven't started yet because it's not the right time. You can't improve what you haven't launched yet.
Right.
The example that comes to mind, and this is kind of an obscure one that maybe not a lot of people relate to, but there's a game. I'm a part-time video gamer, okay? I enjoy video games. There's a game out there called No Man's Sky, and you've probably heard of it. I mentioned it to you.
Yep.
It's a space simulator.
It's a cool game.
I'm going to spare you the details, but what they did is they created a world, or they created galaxies with, I'm not joking, trillions of stars in this video game system. And it's called a procedurally generated game because they didn't actually create all these worlds, They didn't create it all, but they created a math formula that reproduces it every time you start up your system.
That's crazy.
So I'm just going to spare the details, but the reason they're able to pull it off is because of the algorithms that they created, and they said it's all based on math, and we're getting too far into the weeds.
Math nerds.
But when they started it, the game started in 2016, and it was made fun of, and it was very critically reviewed as an incomplete game.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, it's a mile wide, but a centimeter deep, is what some of the people would say about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they kept this small, and this team was at the time, the studio was 5 people.
Wow. Okay.
It was built by a publisher called Hello Games, 5 people. It was a big undertaking. They have continually improved that game over the years, and so it's more from what it was in 2016, which was just a basic space simulator, to something that's much more complex, and actually is, when people review it nowadays, they say it's one of the best games that's ever come out in the past 20 years.
No way.
Just from what they were able to accomplish.
Wow, so, check that one out.
But when the developer may say, you know, we knew it was imperfect when we launched it, but if they never launch it, they'd never be able to improve it.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the power of actually making the decision in your life that you've been putting off, or following through on something that you've been procrastinating about, is you can't improve what you haven't really launched yet.
Right. Very good point.
One thing.
Very good point.
The other thing is, when to ship is, you know, you can have an imperfect action, like an imperfect plan, with perfect intention, okay? Sometimes the only way forward is to stake a flag and then make changes later. At some point, you just have to do it, right? You just have to go forward and do it.
There's a book that I always, whenever I, not whenever, but oftentimes when I'm afraid to start something, or I'm afraid if I'm going to fail, I'm always reminded of a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have success, you cannot improve your life at all without failure. And so it's so important, at least for me, to redefine failure for me, because failure, no one wants to fail. Failure is icky. Failure is, I'm not as good as I should have been.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you get to be recognized as a champion in the ring? You get recognized by practice, by getting your reps in, by failing every single day.
Yep.
And I guess, you know, when I'm in the mode, I'm like, how fast can I fail? How many times can I fail? If you change how you look at it, it can be, you can actually look forward to failure, because it's information.
Yeah. Yep. And if you put it, the other way you can put it is, you can't steer a parked car.
It's very true.
You know, at some point you had to put it, you had to start up, put it in drive.
Yep.
And drive it out the driveway.
I agree.
Okay, so takeaways. We've kind of been waxing on about this. You know, you can think about it. I don't mean to say we should never plan, but I think what's important to know is that your life can kind of be lived in these cycles of planning and then making a decisions. I think where the challenge comes in is when we don't, if we're, like I said, we're perpetually planning, but we never make a decision. So if we can think of life as cyclical, we're going to have these planning periods of time, but then at some point you have to make the decision,
right? And
then reflect on your decisions, make a change, and then start planning it out again, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Never confused unfinished with uncertain. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
You don't want to avoid a decision because you don't have the perfect plan. However, if you're uncertain about something, you certainly want to, I'm using the same word, but if you're uncertain about something, it's a good idea to identify what you're uncertain about and clarify that.
Right.
But on the flip side, though, if you're not going to make a decision just because it's not perfect, you can always change the imperfections later.
Right.
Not sure if that makes sense or not.
Yep, it does.
And then sometimes you mentioned, you remember a few minutes ago when you said that isn't experimenting important? Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted to come back to that because sometimes committing to a decision is the actual experiment, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that does.
We've used the analogy before, but, before you can spend all your time devising the perfect physical fitness plan, but no amount of planning physical fitness is going to replace going into the gym or going into the exercise room or going on the walk or going for your first run. No amount of planning out your fitness is going to replace actually engaging in fitness.
Right. That's true. Yeah. I mean, and ultimately, realistically, if people just did some push-ups and squats and jumping jacks, they'd be way better off than they are now.
Yeah, but to bring that to exactly.
just do
from
something.
A physical fitness standpoint,
do something.
But the same thing goes for any other stage of life.
Right.
If you have a relationship that's on the rocks or not going the way you want it to, rather than planning out a perfect intervention or a perfect way to fix it, why not just do the next right thing in that moment to make a change?
Yeah.
And so there's no replacement for actually engaging with it. So in closing, because we've kind of been going on about this for a while, but I want to encourage the listeners or viewers, if you're viewing us, what part of your life is stuck in that beta? What part of life are you stuck in that planning mode? Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, if it is stuck in your planning mode and your beta mode, what would actually shipping that look like? Or what would, if you made a decision and started actually moving forward with it, what would that look like?
It could be a big failure or it could be a big success.
Yeah.
Most likely it's probably somewhere in between.
Yeah. So what I would encourage people to do is pick one project idea or decision that you've been putting off or kept in beta mode or in planning mode and give yourself the permission to actually make a decision about it. And be okay with the decision you make probably isn't going to be the most perfect one, but you can always improve on that decision later going forward.
Right. And don't forget that everyone else's success that you see, that's just the highlights that you see.
Yep.
So if you're comparing yourself to other people, don't do that. Only compare yourself to yourself because your situation is unique to yourself, and you have no idea what other people have gone through to get to where they are today. Yep. So don't compare yourself to other people.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It sure is.
And I can't remember where that's from, but that's definitely true. One last thing I want to say. Authors would assert, and very well-known authors would say, even rough drafts have power because at least it's on the page.
Enough said.
Enough said.
I don't think we need to say anything else after that. Any other? Well, I just said don't think we need to say anything else. So I'm gonna close it out now.
Sounds good.
Is that okay? I'll do that.
Just
okay.
Close it out, John.
All right. Yeah. So thanks for tuning into this episode of the nonStatic podcast. If you'd like to stay connected and dive deeper into finding peace, focus, and fulfillment, be sure to sign up to Dr. Josh's nonStatic newsletter at nonstatic.org. And remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with their mental health, we are here to help. Give us a call anytime at Inspire Services, or find a provider in your area. So just take care, keep moving forward.
Enjoy the journey.